Hey guys, so the 2-day head start for Bless Online is over, and in a couple of hours, the game will be available for purchase at the regular price of $30 US for everyone. So, there are a few problems with the game. There's a lot of good stuff to the game as well, but to anyone that's been following along, there is currently a huge uproar over the game. So, the question I'm asking in this video is, should you buy Bless Online now that it's kind of officially releasing into early access? So I'm going to go over the problems first. The biggest one that most people have is performance. Bless Online, we already knew that it was built on Unreal Engine 3. There are optimization issues in the Japan and Korea regions, but it was promised that we would have sort of performance upgrades, optimization increases for the port over to North America and Europe. While some of these did go through, there are still performance issues. There's micro stuttering, there are FPS drops in towns, fairly standard MMO stuff. There are also some more egregious things, such as when you open your inventory, you sometimes get like a second or two of lag. There can be lag when you open other new windows as well. So performance is definitely one of the biggest issues of the game that everyone is talking about. Everyone knows that there are performance problems. There are some fixes to them. If you go into the engine, you can actually modify some values in the .ini files, such as the engine, and that actually helps alleviate a lot of the performance issues the game has, but there are still issues such as the aforementioned inventory opening and a few other small errors, but it does help fix the game quite a bit. I've been fairly lucky. My performance has been pretty steady throughout the 2 days head start, and while I definitely realize performance is a problem, it isn't as big a deal for me as it has been for certain other people. I have seen some videos where people are starting all over the place, but I've also seen videos of players going along perfectly smooth, all their spells come out instantly, and it looks great for them. So it's kind of a mixed bag there. The second issue that Bless really needs to address is action combat. So, Bless Online, Neowiz, the developer, stated that for North America and EU, they would be introducing action combat for all the classes. On release, however, only the Berserker has action combat. The other 4 classes, the Guardian, Mage, Ranger, and Paladin, are currently all still tab targeting. For players that come from games such as Black Desert, Terra, or Blade and Soul, and we're looking for a non-tab targeting game, so they don't want to go to games such as WoW or Final Fantasy XIV, this currently means that unless you're willing to play Berserker, you should probably stay away until it's implemented. The developers have stated that it was taken down temporarily so that they could kind of polish it up a bit more and get it to a level that they felt confident in releasing. But at the moment, unless you want to play Berserker, the other classes do not have action targeting or action combat. They are all tab targeting. In addition to this, in keeping with the content that should have been in there that has been pulled, there is currently no endgame. There's a very uncomfortable video now currently of Strange Religion crying as he tells us all that there's no endgame at the moment in Bless Online, and despite the amazing feeling of leveling, there's nothing to do afterward. And that is actually a real problem. As any player that has played an MMO knows, an MMO's core content is not leveling, it's not the main story, except for 1 or 2 exceptions, we're going to ignore those. It is endgame. This is what keeps players coming back day after day, it's what keeps players playing, it's what keeps them invested. It's all about getting to endgame and participating in the endgame activities. Dungeons, raids, structured PvP, open world PvP, all of that is endgame content. And currently, we have 2 dungeons, but they share the same loot. There's no endgame zones. They're there, but they're kind of barren right now. And there's no endgame PvP. There's open world PvP, which is a lot of fun. I'll get to that later. But arenas and the 100 versus 100 game modes are not there yet. I think we knew that the PvP wasn't going to be there on release. They said it would come out a couple of days to weeks afterwards. But the rest of it is a pretty big problem because hitting level 45 is not that difficult. I haven't gone all that hardcore in these 2 days head start. I played a lot for sure. I guess I went pretty hardcore. Not as hardcore as some other players. I've probably played about 20 hours with the 2 days. And I'm just about to hit level 38, which means I have 7 levels to go. Obviously the 7 hardest levels, but probably another day, at most 2 days of grinding, and I will be at max level. And then I'll have nothing to do. I'll twiddle my thumbs. Maybe I'll hunt down some elites for some gold. And if they haven't implemented Endgame, nothing will change. Now, there are some theories right now that there's no endgame in because it's the 2 day head start. And they don't want players playing the head start to get too huge an advantage over players that buy the official game in a couple of hours when it goes live. There is merit to that, but I think that if that is the case, they definitely should have told us first. And I feel that probably isn't the case because it seems kind of backwards to do. A 2 day head start's already a pretty big head start. There are level 45 players already running around in the game world, and no matter how much you play, if they just keep playing as much as you do, they are going to proceed into endgame faster than you, unless Bless significantly nerfs how much they can do per day. So they need to address endgame. Is it there? Has it just not been activated? Is it coming in a future patch? What's going on? That is definitely something that needs to be addressed. The third major issue that a lot of players have been complaining about isn't as big an issue as I think everyone's kind of making it to be, and that is the translations. So I'm a little biased here because I read a lot of often badly translated Chinese, Korean, and Japanese web novels. And I also have a history of playing badly translated but ported Korean and Chinese games. Not sure how many of you would know the name FlyFF, but I spent a good 2 years of my youth, my misspent youth, in playing that game. Devoted a lot of time but no money to it because I was very broke. And yeah, the translations in that game put I don't want to call it English. But the Bless Online translations, they're not terrible. The only place they're terrible is, unfortunately, probably the place it matters the most, and that's the tutorial and the skills. The tutorial is the first thing a player sees when they get the game. It's literally the first thing you're going to do after creating your character. And you don't want there to be obvious issues with the tutorial, such as translation errors. There are lots of people that got stuck for 5, 10, apparently even 15 minutes somehow, trying to figure out what they were supposed to do when it came to equipping certain skills in the tutorial, because the name of the skills they were given to equip were different from the skills that they had in their hotbar. Now, obviously, trial and error would get you through fairly quickly. I think it took me about a minute and a half, but you definitely want to make sure that your tutorial is good, pretty much above anything else before you release, as it's a tutorial. It's literally the opening, the entrance to your game, and it's the first impression a player gets. The other part is the skills, and skills are pretty important, especially to endgame players or players that are heavy into theory crafting, because if you don't know what a skill does, it's kind of hard to tell if you should be using that skill, if it's a better skill than other skills, and you have to rely on intuition to kind of know which skills are better than other skills because they seem to do more damage or be more effective. Especially for PvP, where you've got a lot of other variables running around as well. So the translation, it's not as big a deal, in my opinion, as some people are making it out to be, but it is still something that should be fixed. Neowiz should definitely look into hiring 1 or 2 translators and ask the community to send in examples of egregious violations of the English language, or whatever other language they may have messed up translations for. The other way they messed up translations is if anyone's seen the leveling, your level up symbol, it isn't congratulations, you have reached level 15. It's something like you have 6th level, or you are 6th level, or something like that. It's pretty, it's funny, kind of endearing if you going for that nostalgic feel of badly ported MMOs, like I said. But it is something that should definitely have been ironed out before the game was released. So that kind of brings me to the next point. The game seems to be missing a bit of polish. There's lots of good stuff about the game. There's lots of parts that can draw you in, make you want to keep playing. But there's also parts that kind of make you scratch your head and go, why? One of the most obvious ones is the Assassin. So the Assassin is the 6th class of Bless Online, and it will be released in 3 months with the first major content patch. Hopefully not the major content patch to bring the endgame. However, Assassin gear and weapons are already in the game, as well as Assassin quests. There are daily quests in Bless Online, and usually one of the dailies is to do an emote with a random class. Assassin is apparently one of those classes, which means that if anyone gets that daily, that is literally impossible for them to complete, because they cannot make an Assassin, because Assassin does not exist. It's also pretty annoying when you're running through a dungeon, and there's no trading in Bless Online, no player trading. There are auction houses, but if you're trying to run through a dungeon, especially with your friends, and you're looking for the gear for your class, and a bunch of pieces drop, and a few Assassin pieces drop, yes, you can use them if you're a ranger, but they're not optimal because the ranger's main stat is stability, and the Assassin's main stat is ferocity. So that's kind of one example of where Neowiz kind of dropped the bar when it came to polish. Another example is, in my personal opinion, jumping. So in Bless, when you jump, it's a normal jump, like an MMO. But when you're running into an object and you jump, if the object is at all curved or slanted, or if you're not running it exactly face on, you will run across the face of the object, kind of sideways. And if you jump, you will jump in that direction, effectively catapulting you across the face of the object and off the other side. Where this is a problem is the fact that there is at least one jumping puzzle in Bless Online. For high round players, it's around level 32 to 33, and it involves climbing up the face of a huge mountain and then jumping across a bunch of floating stones and logs to reach another mountain. And this would not be a problem with a game that has good jumping mechanics. Guild Wars 2 has heavy integration of jumping puzzles. There are jumping puzzles everywhere, in every map. There's a few dungeons, I believe, that have jumping puzzles as a main part of the dungeon. And it's a lot of fun, because Guild Wars 2's jumping puzzles and its jumping mechanics are amazingly well done. In Bless Online, there's nowhere near as much integration of jumping puzzles, but jumping is also pretty annoying to do when you're trying to jump over certain objects. So the game could definitely use some more polish, especially because we didn't get the game released in North America and Europe for many months because Neowiz wanted to polish the game, change the combat system, and make it better for Western audiences. This included optimizations to the game engine and just general overall polish. And it kind of feels like those months were kind of wasted except for the new combat system. So those are the main problems of the game. I suppose the other big problem, for me personally, is lack of customization. And what I mean by that isn't customizing your character. In fact, the character creator is very in-depth. It's probably second only to Black Desert's character creator, which is pretty much like the god tier of character creators for MMOs. And it's really well done. There's a lot of cool stuff. I would have taken a lot more time if I wasn't trying to rush into game when I created my character. But after that, there's very little customization. There are keybinds, but you cannot bind certain key combinations, and you can't bind your mouse. I cannot bind either my side buttons or my left or right mouse buttons to various keys that I want to bind them to. The UI is very uncustomizable, and there's a few other areas that I like to customize for myself that I have found myself unable to do so. So lack of customization is certainly a problem. Now, all that being said, I think the real problem facing Bless right now is lack of PR. And this isn't just aimed at Neowiz, this is also aimed at their emissaries. So for those of you who know, there is an emissary system for Bless Online. Emissaries are content creators and community manager type people who were specially chosen by Neowiz after applying to represent the game, to kind of export content to the masses, and to help manage the communities, Reddit, Discord, the forums, all that stuff. So I'll get back to the Emissaries in a second, but Neowiz is currently facing a real lack of good PR. Now, the narrative seems to have flipped a bit. Right before Bless's release, I am not going to say it was hyped. In fact, a lot of people are saying that this was the most hyped MMO release ever, blah, blah, blah. I do not feel that at all. In fact, most of the kind of week or two heading out to Bless's release, and even the upcoming months before it, people have been very pessimistic about this game. The thing that I think most players knew about Bless before they actually got their hands on the game is that it had failed in 3 other regions. Now, is that a fact? Yes. It failed in 3 other regions. And that's fine, but when that is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of a game that it failed in 3 other regions, even before you start playing the game, you cannot then turn around and say this was the most hyped release in MMO history. People were trashing the game well before it released. People have been very down on the game. People have been saying that it's going to be a quick cash grab, that it's going to be super pay to win. And now that it's been released, people are saying that it was the most hyped MMO in history, that all the fanboys are just kind of eating shit, that sucks to be them, everyone's refunding the game. And Neowiz is having a real lack of good PR here. There is no kind of public relations, and the outward face of the company is kind of being tarnished right now. People are throwing mud at them, and there's very little response. Neowiz is not clarifying what they should be clarifying. They're being very active talking with the servers, and I'd say their response to the servers was actually really good. You'll notice I didn't include server problems as part of the problems, because if you've ever been around an MMO release, server problems are to be expected. Server problems are like the biggest thing in MMO releases. Blizzard has had server problems. I'm not sure if anyone here remembers Diablo 3 release, but it was not pretty. And that was only a couple years ago. I was in high school. Okay, that was the better part of a decade ago. But moving on. They added a lot of new servers very quickly. Their response time for servers has been very good. And as a game developer, you don't want to add too many servers anyways, because the more servers you add, the more you're going to merge servers, lose servers as soon as the game starts to go downhill, which inevitably all games will go downhill. Not all as drastically as a game such as Pokemon Go, which seemed to have half the world playing, and then now you'll see a few players around on evenings. But you don't want to get too many servers because most players are not going to stick around anyways. So I think the reaction with the servers was pretty good. But they really need to step up both their PR and their emissaries need to start kind of playing ball. This is where the emissaries need to decide whether they wanted to be an emissary because they wanted the quick infusion of viewers or subscribers or whatever else they applied to be an emissary for, or if they applied to be an emissary because they actually want Bless to succeed and they want other players to join them playing Bless. Because I have not seen any good PR. There's like 2 threads on Reddit right now talking about how they actually kind of like the game. And even that, it's in a sort of, hey guys, I actually like the game, you don't speak for all of us sort of tone, not a, hey guys, I really love this game and you're all wrong about it being bad. So they really need to kind of turn around the face of it, or at least start to have people talking about why the game is good. Because the subreddit, all the news sites, a lot of other YouTubers, they are all trashing the game. And that's a shame, because there are some good aspects to the game. Like I said earlier, the game is not trying to reinvent the MMO wheel. It's not trying to be something different and distinct. It's not a polka dot dinosaur. It's just a solid MMO. So the good things are, there's no pay to win. Everyone's trashing the fact that it's a $30 game. There's no pay to win. That was pretty much the deal. It was supposed to be the deal we made with Black Desert, and obviously Black Desert kind of fell through. Hopefully that doesn't happen to Neowiz, but for now, the cash shop has pretty much no pay to win at all. I've gone to the cash shop. Multiple people have gone to the cash shop. There's no pay to win. Open world PvP, as I mentioned way earlier in the video, is a lot of fun as well. Like, open world PvP in Bless, I've done quite a lot of it. There's people from both factions in every zone, starting around like level 32, 33. I've probably killed at least 20, 30 players. I've been killed by at least 10. There is a lot of people running around trying to kill each other. A lot of people running around trying to just avoid being killed. There's people calling out other people in faction chat saying, hey, get over here, Union or Hieron are messing around, come help us kick them out. The open world PvP is a lot of fun. Then there is probably for me, currently my biggest draw of the game, taming. You can tame pretty much every monster in Bless Online as either a pet or a mount. I would say like 60-70% of non-human monsters can be tamed. Fairies, wyverns, big cats, small cats, gerbils. I think I saw a marmot that I could tame earlier. In fact, I did see a marmot, I just didn't have a taming scroll for it. Eagles, you name it, it can probably be tamed in Bless Online. You can tame them as mounts, you can tame them as pets. There's a system to upgrade them to make them even better. And they're not pets like combat pets, they're kind of out of combat pets. They're like cheerleaders, they give you extra skills like extra experience gain or gold gain, or extra defenses like my new fairy does. So I'm really loving the taming system. It's a lot of fun. I do wish that I had more taming scrolls. I'm not an enchanter. I can't make them myself, so I had to rely on other players to sell them to me on the marketplace. And because there's so many other people like me that aren't enchanters trying to get taming scrolls, it's very rare for me to actually win any of these bids. But I keep trying because taming is a lot of fun. And finally, the combat feels pretty good. Like, it feels pretty good now, and this is without action combat, at least for me as a ranger. I'm playing the ranger, so I'm not a berserker. And it feels pretty fun without action combat. If I could customize my keybinds even more, put them some on the side of my mouse, and if I had action combat, I imagine the combat would feel incredible. Like, the combat, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely one of the main draws Bless has right now, which is surprising considering it failed because of how boring its combat was in other regions. And I'm really loving the combat. So there's definitely some good aspects to Bless. There are good reasons to at least try the game out. But there are also valid reasons to kind of skip the game for at least another week or two and see what Neowiz does. You don't need to worry too much about falling behind because Bless is closer to World of Warcraft or other gear treadmill MMOs where there's a max level, a hard cap, and then you can kind of prestige level after that for skill points and special stances. But catching up will not be difficult if you wait a week or two, especially if Endgame still isn't added, because then we're not really doing much other than earning gold in that time, and there's nothing to spend the gold on because there's no Endgame stuff. So my advice right now, wait a week. If in a week, at most 2 weeks, there's no news from Neowiz, it's still the same doom and gloom, Bless is going to die in the next 2 days that have been kind of circulating around the community for the last 48 hours, and the game is still in the exact same state as it is now, I would say don't buy it. Otherwise, if it looks like the game's improving, Neowiz has been very receptive to the Western audience's feedback and input so far. If they continue to do so, they continue to listen, they continue to improve upon the game, it's very possible Bless could become a solid MMO. I don't think it's ever going to become the next World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2, but I do think that Bless has the potential to be a solid MMO that players kind of recommend to the players, like, oh, you want an open world PvP MMO and you don't want the stupidly long grind of Black Desert? Yeah, go play Bless. Bless is it's a fun game. I've got a 45, I've got a 50 over there myself. We can play together. I feel Bless has the potential to become a game like that. It has potential to be a good, solid addition to the rather short list of modern MMOs that aren't utter failures. So wait a couple days. If you want to buy it right now, go for it. Like, it's only $30. That's not a lot of money. I've spent more on cheap dates back in high school. So if you want to spend $30 right now, go for it. Don't let me stop you. I've been having a lot of fun myself. It's Certainly not the second coming of MMO Jesus, which to most players is whatever their first MMO was. But it's not the awful piece of trash that most people seem to be making it out as. So give it a try, or wait a week and make your decision then. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you liked it, and have a good one.